Let's get over now to Phil Fontaine, former National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Bill C-15 proposes to recognise the UN Declaration on Indigenous communities. Of course, we've had a busy year for Indigenous entrepreneurs. For one thing, teaming up to buy Clearwater Seafoods. Phil Fontaine joins us now. He, of course, has a new role as a strategic advisor for Facedrive. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Good morning.
Talk to us about Bill C-15. It recognises Indigenous rights in the area of self-government, language, etc. When it's passed in Canada, will it make much difference?
Well, first of all, one shouldn't overlook the fact that it was many years in the making, at least 20 years of drafting the declaration. And initially, only 4 nation states, excluding ones that abstained, opposed the declaration, including Canada. But Canada, and this was during the Harper government years, they reversed their position. The importance of the declaration is, of course, it's about certainty and recognition of our rights to land, our culture, our languages, and the right to self-rule. It is certainly about certainty. And certainty is something that has been missing in terms of the relationship between our communities and our business interests with external business interests. And this is especially true when we talk about free, prior, and informed consent. Here I will note that this is not a veto, but this is about negotiations, negotiating business opportunities. And this is where certainty has been missing. UNDRIP introduces the kind of certainty that both interests have been seeking for years and years. Mm-hmm. So it's good for business, obviously. It's good for Indigenous communities.
We've so much ground to cover with you. Are you encouraged? We saw 2 big stories on the front, Indigenous entrepreneurship front this year. A group in Eastern Canada teaming up to buy Clearwater Seafoods, and also then an Indigenous group investing in Keystone XL. Were you encouraged by developments like that this year?
Well, these are especially impressive because we're talking about a pretty significant investment with premium food brands and Clearwater. We're talking about a $1 billion investment. And Chief Terry Paul and his colleagues there have pulled off something that is really quite significant and substantial. And it's been in the works for some time. And when we talk about the expansion of Trans Mountain, I know that there have been at least 3 Indigenous interests that have been vying for an equity position in the project. They've had discussions with government. I understand that these discussions have been productive, and at some point, I believe that a deal will be struck, which of the 3 vying interests will secure that position. I'm not sure. But beyond that, we're looking at job opportunities. We're looking at doing business, particularly as it relates to impact on our land and people in a different way. And there's clearly a very strong interest in protecting the environment because climate change and global warming is such a major issue in every part of the world. But we shouldn't also overlook the major project in Fort McMurray with Fort Mackay and Mikisew Cree, where they partnered with Suncor on their portion of the deal, largely financed by Royal Bank of Canada, is $500 million. So there are very significant investments that are being made by First Nations interests in so many sectors. But of course, with COVID-19 and the pandemic, those opportunities are few and far between. But the 3 that I've mentioned, I think, are really significant, and they're good not just for the First Nation communities, they're good for Canada's well-being.
Before we let you go, you've signed up as a strategic advisor with an outfit called Facedrive, trades on the venture exchange under FD. They are active in a whole bunch of what they say environmentally conscious businesses, including ride sharing. So tell us, just remind us what Facedrive does and what you hope to do with them.
Well, Facedrive does numerous things. It's, as you mentioned, food delivery. It's similar to Lyft and Uber, but better. It is introducing cutting-edge technologies to do contact tracing, and as we know, because there have been so many reports about this, this has been a huge problem, not just in the general population, but particularly so when it comes to First Nation communities, especially those in the north. And so there's a deal that has been struck with Facedrive and Wew'suwet'en community in western Manitoba. They're going to introduce the product there. They're going to train a couple people, and it's a bracelet like a Fitbit watch that will be able to do contact tracing in a record time, and it will be able to demonstrate that First Nations are capable and able to interact and engage with high-tech companies like Facedrive to introduce something that is desperately needed in First Nation communities. And this is a real credit to both interests, the First Nation community and Facedrive.
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Phil Fontaine, a former National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations.